Hello, 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 hello. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good day to everybody. It's the Gin and Tonic Show. Welcome to the people watching, people in the chat, and welcome to Thunderous. How are you, my good sir, today on this beautiful Friday?
Absolutely fine. Thank you, Stops. Hope you're okay, and as well to the audience. Good to be with everyone again, and I hope you're all having a good weekend. I hope everyone's in good health and ready for the show this evening.
And I hope there's going to be some more people joining us on the panel today. We're expecting Rob, maybe James is going to come a little bit later on. We'll have to see how that works. Faye, unfortunately, I think won't be able to make it today, but maybe next week. What I want to do before we do anything else is say thank you to Thinking Clearly because this is so wonderful. And okay, maybe it's cheesy, but it is the Valentine's Day edition. Okay, so I'm allowed to be a little bit cheesy. If I start crying a little bit, don't worry, it's okay. You know, it's just the sentimental side in me. He came up with a short poem, which I thought is really, really fantastic. And it goes like this. Let me see if I can sing it a little bit. Stops Rob and Thunderous. They took the show away from us. The days got cold, the nights got long. We missed Faye's voice, her siren song. But winter's fading, the sun's returning. Hosts well rested, passion burning. Us infidels, ready to go. It's back, the gin and tonic show.
It says a lot that our members of our audience are kind enough to put some words together for us. Eh?
I thought this was so sweet.
Yeah, thinking clearly. Thank you very much. Really appreciate those kind words.
I think that's wonderful. Okay. And while we're on the good side of things, I don't know, Thunderous, do you know Jimmy Carr?
Yeah, I know who he is. Not my sense of humor, but I know who he is.
Okay, he's got a very sick sense of humor at times, okay? But he said something which I cannot leave unmentioned because he pointed out the most positive thing about misogyny in Islam. Women can get stoned.
That's as bad as that joke in the Bible where it says that Paul got stoned 3 times.
Oh shit, this is so sick. This is so
Uh,
sick. Okay. But you need to think about it. And then it actually gets quite funny. Oh god, oh god. Oh, thinking clearly is here. Matt, really, thank you very much. This was really, really fantastic. Love it. It's so brilliant. It's so nice, and it shows the creativity in people, and it's the good side, and this is what I enjoy very much. Okay, let's get into the news a bit because in Kuala Lumpur in KL, the Malaysian Prime Minister, Mr. Mahathir Mohamad, said the Muslim world is in a state of crisis. And he called for implementable solutions as he hosted a summit of Muslim majority countries. And this was not another OIC meeting. Okay, and for example, KSA, in other words, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, they did not even attend. And he pointed out the entire Muslim world contributes only 5% to global gross domestic product. So we're talking about 56 countries, and they are creating or generating less GDP than one single country like the US. And then they highlighted five problem areas. And one of them, funny enough, is gender inequality. Now, if somebody comes to us and says, well, Islam provides gender equality and Islam was the first ideology to come up with this, well, I'm sorry, nobody agrees with you. And now even the world leaders of Islamic countries in Kuala Lumpur said one of the five major problem areas is gender inequality. And then he admitted that in Muslim majority countries, approximately 65% of women are illiterate. And this is quite amazing. And then he came up with the gender gap report, where the lowest 30 or so countries are Islamic countries, are OIC member states. So please don't come to me and give me this stupid bullshit story about giving women equality in Islam. It's simply not true. And if you want, I mean, we've got the link here, reports, web form, or global gender gap report 20, the rankings and so on. So it's France. It's making headlines again with their burqa ban. And this is a quote. You have a lot of secular Muslim women who say that they feel pressured, they feel threatened. You also have religious leaders going to mayors asking to have separate hours in public swimming pools between men and women. You'll have a lot of young girls who don't want to sit in biology classes in school because they feel pressure from their parents or from their brothers. End quote. And this is reality in 2020 for female Muslims. It tells you a lot. Then you have the UK activist, Tuma Qureshi. Rejection will only make me stronger. So this is a human rights activist, a gender equalist. I don't know if you want to call them a feminist. I think feminist is a I don't know, funny word. Anyway, it's gender equality, and I think this is very, very important, and this is like I love this so much. Rejection will only make me stronger, and that is the way that we should see this. Then in Indonesia, a woman has been spared jail. Why was she supposed to go to jail in the first place? Well, she brought a dog into a mosque in Indonesia. And this video, and this is a mentally ill woman. And she came into the mosque and wasn't aware of anything, and she was just, with the dog. And this went viral last year, and she was supposed to go to jail because she brought a dog there. Okay, and the last item I have for today is blasphemy in France. And I think a lot of people have heard about this, okay, because there's a teenager who made a video who called Islam, I don't know, a shit religion and a religion of hate and things like that. And this girl, Myla, uh, posted this video on Instagram. And what followed were death threats. And she was not able to go back to school because she was threatened so much. And she's now under police protection. And can you believe it? A Muslim called her a dirty lesbian. And this is why she then looked at Islam, and this is why she says Islam is a religion of hate and it's a shit religion and things like this. Only because a Muslim called her a dirty lesbian. And this is the cause of this whole thing. Amazing. Okay,
Just
what
just on that, is she actually a lesbian?
I have no idea.
Okay, let's
I don't
presume
care.
that she's not. If she's not, then that was slander. Yeah. If she's
Is
not,
it slander to be called a lesbian?
if you're not one, surely
Is that really slander? I don't know.
it's a false accusation. Then at minimum.
This, yes, but it's not
Okay,
a defamation. I don't think it's a crime to call a woman a lesbian, even if she's not.
but
I
the
mean,
person could be just as easily offended by being tagged or titled or accused of something that they're not. And if that is the case, then that is far worse or more of a serious crime than calling Islam or the Quran a vile book when you consider that the contents speak for themselves. There is actually a foundation for making the statement, and the text proved that to be the case. So, in effect, she was speaking the truth, whichever way you want to look at it. However, the accusation that she's a lesbian, if she's not, is actually a defamation or an insult or a negative. It's a negative pejorative. That's what it was used.
yeah, but it doesn't matter if somebody calls me a gay. Why the fuck should
That's
I
that's
care?
subjective, though. That's subjective. That's a subjective thing. You could be. That's why we have so much political correctness, where so many people are professionally offended because they're looking for opportunities to be offended.
Well,
Yeah,
I think there's a difference. I think if somebody comes to me and says I've stolen money or something, or I've stolen whatever, it doesn't matter. Then I think it's different. But being gay or being lesbian, who cares?
but
I mean,
yeah, sure. I'm not trying to you know, I think the point I'm trying to make here is that if you was to look at the two statements, the one by the Muslim and one by the young lady's comment has foundation. It has history. It has text. It has 1400 years
Ah, okay, all right, yeah.
to prove its point, whereas the statement by the man is a negative pejorative. So when you look at
Might be unfounded, yes, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
when you look at the gravitas between the two, he stands more condemned by what he said than what she said. So I don't understand how the law is now that she has to be taken into police protection and he's walking around scot free. When the reality of the matter is, intellectually speaking, the man should be arrested for making his statements, whereas the girl should be exonerated for speaking truth.
Well, I don't think that he should be arrested for calling her a lesbian. I mean, come on, you can always go to a lesbian and see how she reacts to men. It doesn't really matter. And if she doesn't because she prefers women, well, so what? And if you call her a lesbian and then she's going to go out with you, well, who's going to complain?
Yeah, but if you're
Certainly not.
calling somebody who's a lesbian and who is a lesbian, then that's just statement of a fact. You're just merely identifying their sexuality in in a correct way as the way that they perceive their own sexuality. If you call somebody a lesbian and they're not, you know, we're arguing semantics here, but logically speaking and intellectually speaking, really, the man gave the graver insult than the woman. You know, so I don't
Okay.
understand how these things work in the public spectrum, in the media spectrum anymore now, or even in the legal world anymore. It just
Okay.
seems that Islam. This is another incrementally example in European countries where Islam is given traction by speaking and behaving and accusing with impunity in any way it can,
Yeah.
and it's done. And it seems that the laws, the constitutions, the manifestos, the governments, the parliaments, commerce are all in fear of some kind of Islamic retribution against them if they speak out against them.
And Izzy's making this point. Somebody kills her, apologies come out and say, well, she should have known she had it coming. This is exactly the sick defense then. Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
And a cynical person could just turn around and say that maybe she made that comment because it will give her notoriety. So I'm not suggesting that is the case, but you can almost see somebody who wants some attention could say something negative about Islam because it promotes them in the media as well.
Okay, I personally don't care. If somebody calls me a gay or lesbian, or I couldn't care less. Then I am a bit impervious to insults or words
I get it
intending to
every
be an
week.
insult.
I
So,
get it every weekend with my nephews, my four nephews. When I go to see them, all I get is gay jokes. You're gay, Uncle. Well, I was just about to say what my name is. You're gay, blah blah blah. It goes on for hours. I get tormented by it. In the end, I just have to agree. Say, yeah, I am gay. I'm really happy because gay is
yeah,
happy and happy is gay.
exactly. This is the point that Tan was making in Speaker's Corner. And while we're on the topic, I forgot to do the introduction because I think it's important that we state that we are a live broadcast and that we are looking at Islam as the ideology. We do not attack. We don't personally go after individual Muslims unless they have a really bad example, or if they've done something that is really stupid. Of course, then I will point them out. But it's not that I generally try and insult or generally try to attack all Muslims. No, it's about the ideology and the bad ideas in this ideology. So the way that it works is this is a live program. Anybody can come and join. You just put in the chat, listen, let me join, and I'll put the link there. And we can then chat about anything that you want regarding Islam. The theme that we have this month is misogyny. This is the predominant theme that we're going to be talking about. And this is us using facts. So we use reality, we use reasoning. We don't use emotions. We don't use fake claims and things like that. And we categorically condemn any kind of abuse, oppression, slavery, violence, anything like that. This is why I am very critical of Islam, and this is why we are doing this. And we do this because we can. And like I said in a video that I posted, I'm doing this like it's self-defense because I'm being followed by Islam every single day. And this is why I want to stop this, because I want free speech. I want to be able to criticize any kind of idea that I want. And Islam tries to stop exactly that. If I read the Quran, it's hate all the time. I'm being called deaf, dumb, and blind. I'm called stupid. I'm being told that I will get tortured for eternity just because I'm using my brain. And this is why I, as a just a normal, decent human being, I'm critical of that. I don't want to be called deaf, dumb, and blind. I don't want to be called stupid, and I don't want to be threatened all the time, just for not doing anything wrong. So, if we say something about Islam, if we are saying anything about the ideas in Islam, and you want to comment on this, or you want to ask us a question, or you want to correct, because we're just humans, we make mistakes. And maybe you can correct us, or you're simply curious about anything Islam. Well, you've come to the right place. And if you have any specialized knowledge in something regarding Islam, go for it. We'll give you the platform. You can come and talk here about it for, I don't know, 15, 20, 30 minutes. We'll let you talk. You can contribute anything that we want, and then we can go and we can look at it and we can talk about it. So what we normally do is we let the Quran speak for itself. Okay, we don't go to the scholars and follow what they do. No, we try and look at the Quran, and then we look how we understand it today. So we don't go and find different scholars, the one who will say, well, it's 50, no, the other one says it's 80, the other one says 80,000, and it doesn't matter what the unit is. This could be people, this could be anything. So the scholars are constantly contradicting each other. This is why we go back to the Quran and see how we understand it, the way that we would understand it if God really had written this. That's it. Don't, oh, by the way, don't go to Patreon, don't go to PayPal. We don't take money. We're independent. You can't pay us only in kind, as it were. Just go and give us some recommendations, give us thumbs up while you're there so that we get some positive feedback.
Can I just add on there, stops
Sure.
that? And for me personally, it's the case of the Quran defines Islam, not Muslims.
Yeah.
So, and this is quite an interesting statement for me to make, because the attacks on Islam should be based on the Quran and the Hadith. And it also defines what a Muslim is. If the Quran makes a statement as to how a Muslim is to be, and a Muslim does not behave in that way, then that person, in my opinion, is no longer a Muslim. The Quran defines Islam as to how we understand it, but also as to how a Muslim is to behave to it in adherence to what the faith that they claim to be of. So that's what the show is about. Let's look at what the Quran is. Let's see what the contents of the Quran are. Let's attack the ideology and the manifesto that we don't agree with. But at the same time, it's kind of like a knife, a sharp-edged sword that's cutting the difference between a Muslim and a non-Muslim as far as the Islamic world is concerned.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I just have to. I just have to, tap myself because I see Takia Watch in the chat. Hey man, what's wrong with you? I thought you'd given up discussing religion. I thought you'd gone into retirement. I thought you were just sipping tea at home and taking it easy with your feet up on the table or something. And now, unless this is not you, maybe this is somebody else who's using your name. But I'm just very surprised to see you back after you said no. You dropped everything because you dropped out completely, closed everything, deleted everything, and left. So I was okay. Anyway, if this is you, welcome to the Gin and Tonic Show. All right. Let's quickly go through a couple of sentences in the Quran. Now, a person that I would actually like to have on the show at some stage, I can't even remember if we've already have it. That's Abdullah Gondal, okay? So he's somebody who is, I think he's ex-Muslim, from Pakistan originally, and he did something. I mean, he's very active, okay. And but one thing he did, which I found very impressive, he did a chapter. I think it was chapter 17 or something, and he gave a Reader's Digest version. Okay, it was really a shortened version of the Quran, and it just gives you the core element of what this is about. And I've done this now with chapter 4, and I've gone up to sentence 60. And this is why when we see people say, okay, this is what the Quran says. Okay, let's just do a couple of sentences. Okay, so we left it off in 24, where you can have sex with married female sex slaves, but not married female Muslims. So to marry a woman and have sex with her, you just need to pay. And that is what sentence number 24 says in a nutshell. All right? This is what I understand what the Quran says in sentence number 4 in the 4th chapter. Sentence 25, no, sentence 25 says, if you can't afford a female Muslim, marry a sex slave instead, after asking the owner and paying her. If they have sex with someone else, they're punished, but only with half the punishment of a female Muslim, which, according to 24:2 later on, is 100 lashes. So she only gets 50 lashes because she's a slave girl. Sentence 26 says the Quran is clear. Okay, we've heard this many times already, and is guidance. So we've heard this many times before as well, which it is neither clear and neither guidance, because it's totally vague and ambiguous. Everything requires interpretation, and it's not guidance. Like, it doesn't tell you much. It doesn't tell you how to pray. It doesn't tell you how to do the Hajj. Doesn't tell you how to pay zakat. It doesn't tell you any of that. So there's no guidance in there. And the guidance that Muslims come up with, like don't kill and don't do this, I don't need a Quran for that. I'm sorry. Sentence 27 says God wants to forgive and others want you to turn away. 28 says God wants to make life easy for you. Yeah, like hell. 29 says spend wisely, trade and don't kill yourself. Hey, here's a nice sentence. Spend wisely, go and trade, don't kill yourself. I'm pointing out a sentence that I find positive, uplifting, not negative in the Quran. I'm pointing it out. So don't tell me we only critique. Don't tell me that we always try and find the negative things in the Quran. Spend wisely, go and trade, don't kill yourself. Good stuff. Okay, but then sentence 30, but if you do, you go to hell. Well, it was good while it lasted. Okay. 31, if you are good, minor infractions will be pardoned. Okay. Don't envy. People will get the equal share. Ask God for stuff. See, this is exactly these things that I don't understand. What the hell's going on here? 33, follow inheritance rules and also provide for slaves. Okay. Number one, you can't follow inheritance rules because they're totally bonkers and they don't cater for slaves. You have to look elsewhere. Okay, 34. Well, this is a sentence that I think we need to spend a little bit of time on. Sentence 34 in chapter 4. Now, I said that there's a couple of things that, the top 10, which we haven't mentioned yet. Because there are sentences in the Quran, like men are a degree above women, men inherit double what women inherit, things like that. These are, in my eyes, they're the top 10. Men can marry 4 women, women can't. A man can marry a non-Muslim, a woman can't. So these are the most important sentences in the Quran. But the one sentence, the number one sentence that everybody knows, that everybody should know, is sentence number 34. Oh, actually, let me quickly show you this. I forgot about this. Let me go. How do I do this? Like this. No, like this. This is a comment I dug out. My English and maths and science and intellect are all better than yours, you lost piece of shit. Get the references for every sentence, you lost piece of shit. You can't because they're all lies. Like I said, only a fool wastes his time with a liar, ignorant Western piece of shit. this is this is the loving comments that you get from the religion of peace, from proponents of that. Okay. This is so nice. All right. Oh, I just wanted to bring back. Okay, this is the. Hang on. How can I get this? If I get this back here, there we go. No, I wanted the definition. Where's the definition? I lost the definition of misogyny. Ah, here, this one. Just to remind people, it's the hatred of, it's the contempt for, or prejudice against women or girls. And misogyny manifests in numerous ways, including social exclusion, sex discrimination, hostility, androcentrism, patriarchy, male privilege, belittling of women, disenfranchisement of women, violence against women, and sexual objectification. And misogyny can be found within and so on. So just to remind people, this is what we're talking about. This is what misogyny is. I know it's the Valentine's edition today, but I'm not going to go and say, okay, all Muslims who say that there is no misogyny in the Quran are right. Because this would simply be untrue. That is why I'm saying, no, sorry. This is misogyny, and this is exactly what we find in the Quran. And this is the primary example, I think, because this is chapter 4, sentence 34. Now, what I've done here is I've broken it down into 4 elements. So we have that men are the maintainers of women. Right? So number 1, this is already misogynistic. Because why would a woman go and require maintenance or being maintained by a man? That is already misogynistic. So, and then because Allah has made some of them excel others because they spend out of their property. Now, we discussed this last time, so we don't need to go. The second point is the good women are obedient, guarding the unseen. This is misogynistic. A woman should not have to be obedient. Doesn't matter what the man says, she has to obey. That's nonsense. And she doesn't have to guard the unseen. In other words, if somebody sees her kneecap, this already a sin. That's crazy. The third one is, if you fear, in other words, it's not something that has happened. It's not something that is a fact. If you just fear ill conduct, you, the man, because the Quran always speaks to the man. So you, man, if you fear ill conduct from one of your wives, then number 1, admonish them. Number 2, leave them alone in bed. And number 3, beat them. And then if they obey you, do not seek a way against them, because Allah is high and great. Okay, this is sentence 34 in the 4th chapter, the 4th chapter being called Women. Now, please, can anybody tell me how the hell can you get from this sentence, sentence number 34 in the Quran, that there is no beating in the Quran? Now, I had a discussion with Jordan M., an Islam apologist, and he maintains the Quran, and in extension Islam, does not allow the beating of women. Now, and this is quite interesting. His reasoning is that since the word beating, or to beat them, is not defined or specified, we can simply assume it's not what we normally understand a beating to be. Now, if you look at the definition of beating, it's, and I quote, an act of striking with repeated blows so as to injure or damage. Another definition, and again I quote, an act of hitting someone repeatedly and hard, end quote. So if we were to read in the Quran, never ever beat your wife, this would have been very easy to do. But we don't get that. We are told that beating your wives, even for simply fearing some sort of disobedience, is perfectly okay. Now, what I maintain is that beating, or whatever word you want to use here, is definitely not what somebody might be like stroking the person with a silk glove, or with a rose, or whatever. It is the next level of punishment, where we start with a verbal warning, which is one, admonish them. And then, if there is no change in our fear of a possible disobedience by a wife, the level of kicking her out of the communal bed. And then, and only then, the third and final level of punishment, the physical beating, where Jordan M. and other hypocritical, dishonest apologists want to downplay this. And this is, I mean, okay, actually, it's a positive sign, right, that they are ashamed by what it says in the Quran. But it does not reflect the wishes of this brutal, despotic, and misogynistic God of Islam. Because that is what it says. And then people, they try and say, well, it's not really the word beat. And if you look at the word beat, then it's actually just with a toothbrush or something like. Please, people, don't do that. It's making it worse. Because on top of the physical beating, it now gets the condescending attitude that you have towards women. It makes it worse. I don't know why people just can't accept it and move on and say, yes, it is misogynistic. But instead, they go and they say, no, there's nothing wrong here, and you can admonish them. Why would you even admonish someone if you fear there is ill conduct? You just can't talk to them. Listen, are you angry with me? That's how you have a conversation with your partner. You don't admonish them. You don't immediately tell them off for something that maybe is happening. Okay, that was my take on this. Thunderous, what do you make of this?
I think for starters, it's something that I preempted last week, perhaps a bit prematurely, where when you look at the process that the Quran describes, it says verbally admonish. And I used the illustration of when two countries are having a difficulty. So let's say, for instance, for the discussion's sake, America and Iran. And if there is a tension between the two, normally what takes place is envoys are sent, ambassadors, and communication between higher politicians in order to even things out. So that would be the verbal admonishment. If the verbal admonishment fails, then in the political sphere, what normally happens is sanctions. So in the Quranic recension, then the sanction would be some kind of removal of spousal privilege, a sanction of any rights that they may have. So that would be the leave him alone in the bedroom. And then when the sanctions don't work, that's when you get the violence. Now, we understand that as human beings in many spheres, not just political, that's just for the sake of the discussion. So it's an incremental increase in escalation, verbal, physical, and then violence. And when I say physical, I mean
Thunderous, just take a quick break and look at the screen. And this is what makes me so angry. Because this is exactly what you are saying. And then somebody says, well, this doesn't matter. If the Quran advocates for the beating of one's wife, then surely we should see examples of such behavior from the Prophet Muhammad. It says, if the Quran advocates for the beating of one's wife.
Yeah, but the
Well,
thing
it
is,
fucking does that.
of course it does. But then this goes on to. I mean, I wanted. The difficulty you got here is, and this is where I've said to many times that you got the two faces of Islam: the Islam that lives in the Islamic controlled countries, then you've got the Islam that lives in the West in the non-Islamic countries. In the non-Islamic countries, this is the propaganda and response and retort that you're going to get. Whereas in Islamic controlled countries, it is beat your wife.
And this is the whole point. And how can anybody be so ridiculously dishonest? How can anybody be
What
such a
choice do you
prick?
have? But what choice do you have? If you live in an Islamic controlled country and you're a Muslim and the Quran says beat your wife, this is where the Quran defines Islam. You will say that's what it teaches, that's what we do because that's what it says and that's who we are. But in the Western world that condemns that kind of behavior, you can't stand there and say, yeah, we can beat our wives because our religion says so. You know you're going to stand condemned, not just in front of the community, but legally as well, because you're committing a violent act. Now, the chances are those violent acts are being carried out anyway. They're happening inside doors. And for the sake of the woman has no choice but to accept the beating because that's what the religion is prescribed for her. She's not going to go to the police because not only does she go against her own Allah because she's disobeying her husband, but then she's bringing reproach on the name of Islam as well. So she gets struck two chords. One, she gets abused. And two, she can't do anything about it because she's going against the husband, which by implication means you're going against your God. And
Exactly.
second is you're bringing reproach in the name of the religion that you're supposed to be entwined with. So you're going against your God twofold. So in the Western world, this is where, like, you get scholars for dollars. They'll say, well, it's a symbolic beating. I remember Zat Faker Naik or Faker Naive say that it's a symbolic beating. You beat them with a handkerchief. Hold on a minute. You've shouted at them. You've then left them alone in their beds. You've verbally abused them. You've then psychologically abused them. How does hitting them symbolically with a handkerchief, how is that a greater insult to the first two? It's nothing. It doesn't even register. You'll probably hurt them more in a play fight than hitting them with a handkerchief. Then you get the other ones that says hit them with a mishwak. A mishwak meaning that I think is the toothpick. You hit them with a toothpick. And you'll notice that in the Arabic Qurans, they don't have parentheses. The actual word, I forget the word is, but it actually transliterates as scourge. In the English Qurans, you'll have it in parentheses, lightly beat or beat lightly for the Western audience. So this is where the Muslims are monumentally dishonest, not just dishonest in the Western world, but they're dishonest in their translations as well. It speaks of something else. If you have to water down the message of Allah, what does that say about your view of Allah, that you have to water down his message because you don't want it translated accurately for fear of what other people will think of your Allah? Well, that's what he's trying to say about how to treat women. That must mean, by implication, you fear man more than you fear your Allah, surely. What do you think?
Yeah, and then the point with, well, surely if it would have been allowed, then Muhammad would have done it. That's absolute nonsense. It doesn't follow. It's a non sequitur. It's a logical fallacy.
The thing
No, it
is,
does not. Because I
that
can make a law and not follow it myself. So that doesn't hold
absolutely,
any
like
water.
murder is wrong, and you don't commit murder, so that must mean that murder doesn't take place because Muhammad didn't commit murder. But
No,
the thing is
that's
as well, but we all know that the Hadith are heavily censored. They're heavily censored, so we know that those. I forget which one of the tafsir says that it had to be censored because it would have brought shame on Muhammad's behavior or something. I'm paraphrasing several years ago. So we know that the hadith are censored in order to glorify Muhammad. So we can't rely on the hadith anyway. And that's the Western world saying we can't rely on hadith. The Muslim world themselves are now saying they can't rely on hadith. So if they can't rely on the hadith, they can't make us expect any sincerity out of it in the first place. Well, they're the very first originators in the past 50 years to say that the hadith should not be relied on. So the burden is on them, not us.
okay. Let's see what others say. Mohammed Kasim, welcome, and James Speaker's Corner, welcome to both of you. Mohammed was first. What do you say about this?
Yeah, so we can't. What you're doing right now is you're isolating sources. So we have two main sources within Islam. We have Quran and then we have Hadith. Within the Hadith, we find various narrations telling us that this particular word, which is daraba, the root word is daraba. The literal meaning is not beat; it's hit. So this hitting, the Prophet says that this is without harm. This you can find this in Sunan al-Tirmidhi. It says this hitting, striking without causing pain. Then we also have another narration where, let me just quote two more narrations. It says many women have come to the family of Prophet of Muhammad. So this is the Prophet saying this. He said many women have come to the family of Muhammad, complaining about their husbands striking them. These men are not the best among you. And then we have another narration where it says, how does one of you strike his wife as he beats the stallion camel and then embrace her? So this is in Bukhari. And another narration where let me just finish. There's another narration where the Prophet is telling a woman not to get married to a man who frequently beats women, and he advises her to marry another person who doesn't beat. So from this we can clearly see this hitting is not with harm. So it's not supposed to cause pain. It's not supposed to cause any harm. So this is symbolic. It's supposed to be a gentle tap or kind of shake that person and make them get to make them understand the seriousness of the situation. And it's actually a restriction.
You didn't hear what I said in the beginning, that this makes it even worse. That this is such a condescending gesture that it makes the woman look like a stupid fool, that she doesn't understand that now you need to tap her. Come on. That is surely, number one, highly dishonest, number two, highly misogynistic, and three, a total cop-out. When for 1,000 years, people, all of the scholars said it is beat them, scourge them. And nobody came with this thing, well, Muhammad didn't, and maybe tapped them lightly, and maybe with the mishwak and things like that. And now suddenly, in the 21st century, you come along and you say, well, there are some other opinions about this. Forget about the Quran. Fuck the Quran. We don't care about the Quran. We know better what God wanted. And that is to be really condescending to the women and go and tap them. Really?
You said there's opinions to scorch them. Where does it say scorch them?
There's several other translations who use
the word scorch. Scorch means burning with something flame or heat.
No. SCOURGE.
Scorch does not mean burning. Scorch means like whipping. The original form of the word where scourging comes from the Romans, because they used to put a broken sheep bone inside of their ropes when they're whipping people. That was scourging, because when the whip hit the person, it tore off a piece of their flesh.
That's not found either.
Yeah, so
Mohammed, you've had your say. Let me hear what James Speakers Corner has to say. Welcome, James. What is your take on this? And then it's Deez. I'll get you in. Let you get in just in a few minutes.
Welcome everyone. So I think it's worthwhile to kind of look at the Arabic words that gets translated as either beat or hit or sometimes scourge. That Arabic word comes from daraba. That's the tripartite root. And if you look up this word, then there's a good breakdown that looks at the different uses that it has. And most of those alternative uses that don't mean beat, like for example, walk away or present an example, those other uses tend to require kind of some sort of preposition or other words which are not present in the actual Arabic, because the Arabic in this verse kind of just says, the equivalent of beat them. And so the only other way you could linguistically translate this would be present them, but that wouldn't make any sense in the context of the verse. It'd be like, if you fear disobedience or ill conduct from your wives, then admonish them, leave them in their beds, and present them. Obviously that doesn't make sense. So we do have to kind of admit that this is saying beat them. About kind of Muhammad's point that he's claiming that kind of we can infer that it must be a light beating from the Hadith records. However, I can acknowledge that that there are some kind of sort of transmissions or traditions from, let's say, Ibn Abbas or so on, saying that it's claiming that it's meant to be just tapping them with like a toothbrush or a feather or that kind of stuff. But I'd say that there are other hadiths also kind of rated as authentic that present a different story. For example, Muhammad hitting Aisha in the chest such that it causes her pain, that sort of thing. So and we can maybe get into those other traditions.
But the other thing is, you didn't hear what I was reading last week when I said that there are sentences where it says, for example, Muhammad very openly says, one question you will not be asked is who beat his wife at on Judgment Day. So those are the things that show quite clearly that Muhammad was definitely for the beating of women. There are several examples of this in the hadith, which is why I don't like the hadith, because you can get anything that you want in the hadith. You can find positives and negatives to your heart's content, whatever you want. And this is why I tend to go with the Quran, and there it says this is a stepping stone. 1, admonish them; 2, leave them alone in bed; and 3, beat them. And that makes sense. Nothing else makes sense. And Muhammad Qasim, I just want to ask something. Are you the guy who was here a couple of weeks ago who said that raping sex slaves, even when they are married, is perfectly justified?
Yeah, I never said that.
Okay.
But I was the person who I was you were discussing with last night.
Can I just add on that as well? Not to labour the point, but there is a hadith as well that talks about Aisha complaining about a woman whose bruises were as green as her dress that she was wearing. I distinctly remember that one as well. So I think you'd have to be stupidly perverse or hopelessly ignorant to not see the manifesto or the attitude that's being displayed here, or the mindset that the ayah is talking about. It's talking about a retribution against the wife from her husband if he merely fears that she's going to behave in a disobedient way. If Allah, the greatest communicator from a book made clear and easy to understand, cannot make it clear enough that this is supposed to be a peaceful act, then what are we supposed to conclude other than that it's a violent act? Specifically, you see the escalation in and context of how to treat the person in the first place. It is going from one extreme, from one step progressively to another step that we all see in our own lives when we're dealing with disputes.
Yeah, can I respond to that?
Let's just listen to what Deeds has said. He brought this up. Welcome, Deeds. What is your opinion? What do you have to say about this?
Hello? Hello?
Yep, you're on.
Oh, all right. So I just wanted to say, like, you guys are jumping to conclusions because, Muhammad is like the role model for all Muslims, right? So, the hadith that Thunderous mentioned, we don't have to consider what some other guy did to his wife, or, what Muslims are doing right now to their wives. Those are wrong men following misinterpreting the verses. What we have to follow is the Prophet. What we will follow is the Prophet. It is impossible to follow the Quran without the Prophet.
Okay, so you don't care what the Quran says if Muhammad did something different?
It's impossible for Muhammad to contradict the Quran.
Well, Muhammad contradicts the Quran all the time.
I would like to see examples.
Well, I mean, there's no stoning in the Quran, for one. There's nothing in the Quran that says you need to enjoy raping female slaves.
Hold on, you mentioned there's no stoning in the Quran. How's that contradiction? You know what a contradiction is? It's when one thing is stated and then another thing is going against that. And where does it say that you cannot stone?
It says in the Quran that the punishment is lashes. Muhammad said stoning. That's a contradiction.
Lashing for what? What are we talking about exactly? What, adultery or
adultery,
fornication or what?
Adultery.
Okay, show the verse. Show the verse where it says.
No, you don't know the Quran. You don't know the Quran says that you get lashes for adultery.
Yeah, sure. It might be abrogated. It could be the hadith can abrogate a verse of the Quran as well.
So, in other words, Muhammad is worth more than what God says. God says in the Quran to give them lashes, and Muhammad says, no, fuck God, I'm going to do something different. That's it. And then you say, no, it's Muhammad.
And this is a book.
Work like that. He's the messenger. He explains whether a verse is abrogated or is it not.
No, you can't take that. How can you do that? I've just said, do you follow? I mean, Deez just said he follows Muhammad. Does he go and enjoy raping female slaves the way that Muhammad suggested it?
It wasn't rape, it was consent, with consent. And I've got evidences from classical scholars.
There was no consent. Why are you lying? Please don't lie, okay? You come here to the Gin and Tonic show. I'm giving you an opportunity to talk, but please don't lie to us.
I'm not lying. I'm telling you I'm going to give you evidence, and you're saying it's a lie.
Yeah, just mention the source.
Sure, Imam Malik mentions it. Let me just pull up his exact statement.
Imam Malik mentions what?
Yeah, it's in Muwatta Imam Malik, volume 2, page 734. He says you need consent from the person, and he says that the person who's raped, he has to there has to be a punishment, has to be applied upon him.
Okay, Muhammad says the opposite. Now what?
He doesn't say opposite. He doesn't say you can rape.
He says you can rape and
He
you
says
can
do not do
enjoy
harm.
raping it as on top of it. Yes.
No, okay, show the word where it says rape. You're making stuff up
Show
right
the
now.
word what?
Rape. You said he says you can rape. So show the word rape within the hadith. He doesn't mention rape.
He's speaking Arabic. There is no word rape in Arabic.
Then why are you claiming that he's saying rape?
Because this is the way that it is used. If you translate something, then you use the word rape. If you say
Okay.
in the old text
Stops.
that
Could you
we
just mention
decided
the
to have
hadith?
sex
We
with
could all
them,
check it out.
if it says we decided to have sex with them, does that mean we went to ask them if they would like to have sex with us, or does it say we raped them?
Hadith is very clear. You cannot harm the women.
Hadith is very clear. It says we
the
decided to have
slaves.
sex with them.
So it still doesn't say rape. You know what rape is, right? It's force. With force, you grab them, they're screaming. You won't find any incident within this Islamic literature where the companions, the great companions, or the Prophet himself, did this action of rape. So you won't find where they be screaming and they say, "Oh
What
no,
are you
we don't
talking
want to
about?
get raped."
What kind of a Muslim are you? Don't you know your own texts?
There is a incident where you can find that they were screaming or they were forced.
Well, it's not going to mention they were screaming, but then we read a verse sometime last year that was talking about coitus interruptus, because they'd just gone into a war, and they were raping the soldiers or the Muslims that were following Muhammad, was asking about coitus interruptus, and that was raping the women that they'd just taken possession of, and they were worried about getting them pregnant.
Well, it's still not rape, is it? I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking about
What do you mean it's not rape?
Their husbands were
what
standing.
are you talking about the fact that they abstain from making them pregnant, or?
Did you not
I'm
understand?
talking about that they said we decided to have sex with them.
Exactly, they decided. It's a mutual consent they gave.
The men decide, and this is mutual? Are you out of your tree? What's wrong with you?
It's mutually, like I said, the hadith is very clear. You cannot harm them.
It's not
this
mutual.
would be
The hadith
harm
is very
if
clear. There is no consent.
The hadith does not say women did
There
not
is consent. I
consent.
just told you this classical.
But the hadith cannot be reliable as far as women. There is no such thing as a woman saying, I consent to being raped. That is just stupid to suggest that a statement could ever exist like that. I consent, because if she consents, it's no longer rape.
What is this? It says here, we took captive some excellent Arab women and we decided to have sexual intercourse with them. It's not that we asked them, would you like to? We courted them, we went out with them a couple of times. It says we decided to have sex with them.
After we took them captive.
That is called rape.
Of prisoners.
Yeah,
that
but
it
doesn't mention
today
consent.
we
Wait.
call rape. If you think this is very nice, if you think that everybody should do that, there's something wrong with you. You're sick.
If they become pregnant, they ascend from the status of slavery to Muslim women, so they're not slaves anymore.
That's
not true. That's not true, because the fact is, if a child is born as a product of being outside of the wedlock, then the child is not recognized as being the son or the daughter of the man that got the woman pregnant.
I'd like to see the law source for that, or the fatwa for that.
We're not going down this rabbit hole. We're not going further and further. We're talking about the misogyny. We're talking about the way that women are being beaten. And you came and you said Muhammad never did this, and this is why we follow Muhammad, and Muhammad is our idol, and this is the way that we roll here in the Shia. Well, you don't. You are better than your God. You are better than Muhammad. You are better than the Quran, because you don't do this.
Wait.
You just
nobody
defend it.
Nobody says we have to do everything that Muhammad did in the 7th century. Nobody
But
says that. Okay,
given
clearly there are some
Hang on,
things
hang on.
we don't
You
have to.
just said we need to follow what Muhammad did. He's the role model.
Okay, let me clarify. Muhammad rode camels. Muhammad liked horses. We don't have to like horses. We don't have to ride camels. Muhammad married 11 women. We don't have to marry 11 women.
because
There are
you're not
differences between Muhammad. Hello?
Yeah, no, no, fine.
Yeah, so clearly Muhammad did some things that we don't have to do.
Okay,
they
so you're
weren't
contradicting yourself, and that this is much better. The second version is much better than the first version.
No, I'm saying when it comes to Islamic doctrines like prayer, fasting, um, etiquettes, behavior, sayings, du'as, all that stuff, you obey Muhammad. But when it comes to simple things like, like, do you like horses? Do you like white horses? Do you like green clothes versus yellow clothes? Muhammad had a preference for green, as far as I know. Muhammad had a preference for, yeah, he had preferences. He was a human being just like us. You don't have to have the exact same preferences. You don't have to be a warlord. You don't have to be a military genius. Those types of differences.
You said
Let me
Muhammad.
ask you a very simple question. Muhammad said that all women have a deficiency in their intelligence. Do you disagree with Muhammad?
That's a hard one because I would have to understand what he meant by that. Yeah.
A
He
different-
said all women are less intelligent than men. Do you disagree with Muhammad?
All right, I'll have to look that up. Give me 1 minute.
So you can't answer a simple question?
Well, I'm sorry, but I don't have the exact source. I don't know what
It
context the
doesn't
hadith
matter
is
the
in.
exact source.
no
If Muhammad said
I
that
assure you
all
it
women
does.
are
I
less
assure you it
intelligent,
does.
would you disagree?
There are hundreds of thousands of fake hadiths. There are every day people quote hadiths without context. I'm sorry, it just has to be said.
Make hadith.
If Muhammad said that all women are less intelligent, would you disagree?
If Muhammad said, something in the future is going to happen, I'd have to agree. If Muhammad said, if something means X, but I don't understand X and I might think it's Y, I'd have to
What
disagree
don't you
because I don't understand
why
what.
are you being such a prick? I'm asking you a straight
I'm sorry.
question.
I'm sorry.
If Muhammad
It's not a
said
straight question.
all
I'm sorry.
women
It's
are
not.
less intelligent, would you disagree?
Depends on what you mean by less intelligent.
What does
Does he
less
mean it in a general sense?
I don't
with?
believe it. I don't believe it.
Guys,
This
why don't
guy-
we just give him the specific
Does he-
hadith?
Yeah,
no,
please.
I
read
don't
it
want to give
together.
him the specific hadith because then we're going to
Why?
argue
Why-
about
why-
individual words and translations and things like that. This is not
No,
the
look,
point.
look,
The point that I'm
I'll
trying
be-
to make
look.
is the corruption and the horrible morality of Muslim apologists. That they can't even disagree if Muhammad were to say that all women are less intelligent than men. They still cannot get themselves to admit it. This is the problem that I have, which is why
Okay,
I don't
you know
want
what-
to
you know
go
what?
to the exact hadith.
Just
This is-
give me one or 2 minutes. I'll look it
Because
up
there
and
are
I'll answer
20
your
of
question.
these. Then you have to go to all 20 and you have to go and inspect each of them
Well, then
and
fine.
do this. No, this is not the point. The point that I'm
Okay,
trying
fine.
to
I'll
make is
answer
if
2 or 3
Muhammad said
questions.
this,
2 or
would you or
3.
not? Finished.
If Muhammad said something clearly scientifically wrong, of course I would have to disagree. Of course. If Muhammad said the sun was blue in color or the earth was made of water, I'd have to disagree, obviously.
That's good. That's
Well,
good.
he says the fever is
of
coming
course,
from the
of
hell.
course.
Is fever coming from hell? No. Do
Are
you
you
disagree
kidding me?
with
Are you
Muhammad? No,
kidding
you
me?
will not disagree. You will argue.
Scientific facts that contradict 21st century science, enlightenment, the scientific method derived from enlightenment thinkers, the most purified way of attaining objective knowledge about our environment, with the most accurate information that we have about astronomy, biology, examples like photosynthesis or the laws of gravity or existence of atoms or the principles of mechanics. If Muhammad said something 180-degree opposite, of course I would have to disagree.
Have you ever come across any reliable and authentic narrations of Muhammad saying something that contradicts those, sound scientific principles?
That's a good question. I have. There are places where he says, the shooting star thing, for example.
Okay, how did you react when you came across that?
Well, that's where I stay agnostic about Islam. I'm not 100% hell bent on following Islam. There are, I might, depending on how much of the evidence contradicts Islam, how much supports it, I might have to change my beliefs. I'm not dogmatic in my thinking.
Okay, that's cool. And so would you describe yourself as, I know, you're considering Islam or that sort of thing?
I actually wanted to talk about the prophecies of the Prophet, which kind of keep me inside Islam, because
Okay.
they seem to be convincing.
Prophecies.
I've looked into quite a lot of prophecies, and I'd be happy to do that with you sometime. But I think Stokes might want to sort of stick on topics and he's
Yeah.
This
prepared
is
a
going to
show.
be one of the
Yeah.
themes. In future, we are going to have one of the themes in Islam because it is very strong. One is going to be prophecies, yes. So this
What's
would
your
be
name?
wonderful.
Sorry, person with the blank background. What's your name?
Deeds.
Deeds.
Okay. Do you have
Yeah.
Discord or something like that, Deets?
No. What's Discord?
Oh, it's like a kind of a messaging kind of app or something. I was just wondering if I could get your email so that I could I know if you wanted to talk about prophecies, then I know I've looked into them quite a lot, so I know.
I mean, I'll get the app. It's not a big deal. I'll just download the app and make an account.
Okay, I'll write my email in the private chat in the meantime, and because I've looked into the prophecies, and basically I know the short answer is that that there was this guy called Nostradamus. Basically he made a lot of
He's also a
prophecies.
famous prophet. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he made a lot of prophecies, and often they were kind of very vague, and people often sort of remember the ones that sort of seem to match up to things that happened in the future, but forget about the ones that kind of don't match up with the future and are kind of have been disproven and that sort of thing. I'm pretty sure Muhammad's in the same position, so I know I'd maybe like to
I do
show
agree.
you my reasoning for that.
Some of his prophecies might seem ambiguous, but some of his prophecies are very accurate. The prophecy about his
No, there
daughter
is not a
dying.
single prophecy. But I don't want to go into this
Yeah,
now. I
yeah.
want to
So
stay on
Yeah.
misogyny. And James, I'd love for you. I mean, don't you want to take like a 20-minute segment and talk about prophecies when we have the theme of the month, prophecies?
yeah, of course.
That would be wonderful. That'd be great. Okay. All right. Let's go back to 434 because we have these four elements: maintainers of women, which is misogynistic in itself. Women have to be obedient, which is misogynistic. And if you only fear ill conduct, you can do steps 1, 2, 3, and it doesn't matter what the steps are. This is already misogynistic because there is no reciprocal command or anything allowance in the Quran. And number 4, if they obey you, do not seek away against them. And that's terrible. This is misogynistic as well. The biggest problem is there is nothing in the entire book that allows women to be angry or in any way to admonish anything towards the man. And this I find terrible because it's always the men are allowed this, the women are not allowed this. The men this, the women this. And this is the terrible thing. And this is what I cannot understand. This is what I cannot accept. And this is why I call this highly misogynistic.
Another kind of something I'd like to add to that is that often people, when they see Quran chapter 4 verse 34, they try and say that it's been misinterpreted and that the beating isn't meant to be just like any old beating. It's meant to be with a feather or a twig or a mishwak or that sort of thing, and it's meant to be very light.
I think that's just silly.
But I mean, what I'd like to say about that is that kind of if we look at the actual real world consequences of Quran chapter 4 verse 34, like the real world consequences are that, in the Middle East today, you have sheikhs with sort of a TV station kind of programs saying things like, "Oh, beatings are actually a blessing from Allah, beatings towards your wives, because Allah said, or Muhammad said, not to hit their face, and this is a blessing towards them." So, and there are also like TV shows in Morocco showing women how to do makeup in order to conceal the signs of domestic violence. So I think what we can conclude from this is that rather than a teaching which has elevated the moral conduct of human beings, this is a teaching which has resulted in human beings kind of looking at this verse and thinking that hitting your wife if she's being disobedient is kind of sanctioned by God and by by God. So this has actually resulted in negative, worse behavior by humanity. Like it's been bad moral guidance. Like we ourselves could improve this verse. We could make this verse even better than it is easily, simply by saying, instead of just having it written beat them, if we said beat them lightly by tapping them with a mishwak, that would be an improvement on the verse, because it would result in less people thinking that it's okay to kind of hit them in the face, which clearly there are scholars today who think that way. So if we ourselves as humans can make this verse better and make it so that humanity receives better guidance from it, then how can it be from God? I know.
The thing is, that's what I said at the beginning of the show, that you have the translation for the Western world and you have the translation for the Muslim world. With the Muslim world, it is exactly as you've said there. It is beat. It is what it says on the tin. There is no parenthesis with lightly or with a mishwak or with a handkerchief. Whereas in the Western world, you have that we have to water it down because of the image. And the fact that you have to water it down shows that you've got more fear of man than you fear of your own God, that you have to water down his message. He's supposed to be your God and the grand creator and instructor of all the whole universe. So what does that say about the Muslim world in the Western world as far as watering down with parenthesis is concerned? And then when you get people coming on the show like we've just had, and you got the usual defaults, I don't accept the hadith, it's taken out of context, the translation is wrong. You know, the defaults that you get in the Western world when trying to cover up this mess, this is where the confusion lies, because no one's being honest. You're not getting anybody honest in the Muslim world saying, well, actually, this is what it says, this is what I am, this is what I believe, which is what a Muslim is supposed to do, because if that's what it says, that's what you are. And if you challenge anything that the book is saying, then you're challenging the very creator that you're supposed to be being loyal to and aligning yourself with. And then you got non-Muslims that know what the book says, and then they're castigated, they're reprimanded, they are intellectually or they're having their freedom scourged, symbolically then, by being maligned in the media, by challenging these verses and saying that you're nothing more than an Islamophobic, a bigot and a hater. So
exactly.
that's because of the twisting of the text that you guys do. Like James, for example, he
Twisting?
said,
What twisting?
yeah, let me finish. Like James just mentioned, he said that you can make the verse better by adding hitting with miswak. But we already have Islamic sources that Allah made it very clear. He says, follow the messenger. And when we follow the messenger said this hit is without harm. So that itself tells you that it's symbolic. It's not supposed to be.
But that makes it worse. Why don't you listen? I just said that makes it worse.
It's consensual. So if the woman agrees,
it's not consensual. It makes it worse. Why can't you listen?
Hold on. If a woman wants this to be applied upon her, she wants the God-given law to be applied upon her. What's wrong with that? I mean, a husband and wife, they hit each other in the bedroom, and no one has a problem with that. So in this instant, if the woman is happy and she's pleased with the law of God to be applied upon her, and she's a Muslim woman, she obviously believes in God. So what's the problem?
Okay, let me ask you a very simple question. Do you think there is a situation which justifies a man beating a woman?
Yeah, not beating.
I'm asking you a question. Do you see a context, a situation, or anything where a beating of a woman is justified?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. That's the main thing. Deeds, same question to you.
A context where beating your wife is justified. No, I can't think
beating
of any.
is like multiple strikes.
Oh, never. No, I can't think of any. No.
Can we just add on to this, right? But you keep talking about like you have to add where Muhammad said and the Mishwak and all these things. We're not. It's easy to identify one verse and try and water it down, which is exactly what you do. But this is the problem arises though when you take all the verses that are associated with the Islamic Manifesto against women. When you add all of them up and you put them all together and you stand back and try and see what the mindset is behind, it is not one of peace with women. It is not one in the slightest. The Islamic world pre-Muhammad Islam and the Islamic world post-Islam is a guiding factor as to the ideology and mindset against women. Women before Muhammad had businesses. Muhammad's boss was a woman, a wealthy woman, a respected woman. After her death, look at the state of women in Saudi Arabia now. Is it better?
So you're narrowing it down to just his wife.
Islam correctly.
I'm narrowing it down to Islamic women, of which Khadija is an example of what the status of women
were
was.
actually buried. They were buried prior to Islam. They were actually killed, and you can find the reference within the Quran.
There's no evidence of that. There is no historical.
It's in the Quran. Allah mentions that they used to bury, the child is gonna ask, and we also have in history as well.
Okay, should we believe what's in the Quran?
We have in history as well. We have history as well. So within the history, it also tells you that they used to. Umar anhu, he's the one who. I'm telling you, Islamic history.
There is no history in the Quran.
Umar used to bury. Yeah.
And we're going to do a show on the history of the Quran. The history that's contained in the Quran is absolutely fictitious. That there was a time in
Islamic history.
There was never a time in Saudi Arabia where women were chronically being buried because they were found to be females and buried as children.
What?
There may have been isolated. Give me the dignity of finishing. There may have been isolated incidences, as there have been throughout history, through all nations and cultures, right, in times past. And you're conflating and exaggerating to justify the behavior of women as Muslims against women since that. The fact of the matter is, Khadija herself, her lifestyle proves you wrong. Simple as.
Okay, let me respond to that. Yeah.
A businesswoman, that proves that women could have businesses, they could have dignity, they could have individuality. Then after Muhammad took over and she died, look at the state of women then. 6-year-old girls were then allowed to get married and have sex with 54-year-old men. That's the status of women.
Let me respond to that. So you can find within the Islamic history, you can find that there was a companion who used to take people's kids, with the women, the girls, and he used to bury them for them, and he used to actually do that as a job. So you're pointing to one example of Khadija and neglecting other part of the history. I think that's deceiving. It's a deception that you're trying to apply.
The point I'm trying to make is you're not finding any secular historian agree with you. It is all based on Muslims trying to defend Islam. That's all it is. You're not finding secular
where did you get Khadija's story from? You got that from the Islamic history. So you mentioned Khadija, so that's from the Islamic history, isn't it? It's not from secular sources, is it?
You can't deny that. That can't be denied.
Sanders, you need to let him finish because nobody can hear either one of you if you are talking on top of him.
Sorry. I apologize. My indignation was getting the better of me.
Okay, so Deeds, you'll have to say this again.
What do I have to say?
Weren't you just talking about what the people were doing at the time in history?
Yeah. I was going to say the history, pre-Islamic history, is very, very unclear and obfuscated. We don't have good sources about the pre-Islamic history.
What were you saying about this?
Yeah, so I was basically saying that there were instances where they used to bury the life.
So is this history or is this something? Are these Islamic texts?
These are Islamic texts and also history within. You can find Ibn Ishaq saying these kind of things.
Okay, this is not history. History is something that is a fact. Something that is historic actually happened. But you can't say the
history is not always a fact. It's testimony.
What?
Ibn Ishaq.
History is testimony.
We don't have any text of. What do we have from Ibn Ishaq? Do we have the biography? No, we don't have it.
Whose biography? We
Muhammad's
have his
biography,
biography.
but not by Ibn
Yeah,
Ishaq.
we have that as well.
No, we don't.
Yeah,
Well, we have
by
a
him.
version by Ibn
We have a
Hisham
rendition
through
by
Ibn
Ibn
Ishaq,
Hisham.
but it's basically
I
the
don't
same
know.
though. Ibn Hisham was Ibn Ishaq's like student, and he either rewrote it or that kind of thing. So it's
Exactly.
normally taken to be kind of pretty much the same.
That is the claim. That is the claim. But he says right in the beginning, I left out the worst parts.
Yeah, that's true. I think the main thing that he was most likely leaving out was like the satanic verses incident, right? But I think what Deed said, that pre-Islamic history is quite patchy. I think that's a fair statement, and I'd
Yep.
say that it could well have been that there might have been children being buried alive or babies being buried alive. Like, I don't think we know for certain either way, but our measurement, our metric with which to judge Islam and its teachings by shouldn't be whether or not it's more benevolent than, you know, a 5th century or 6th century pre-Islamic Arabia. It should be kind of whether it's the best teaching for mankind to live by. Because if this is meant to be teaching for all time, then, you know, we should be judging it compared to, well, can humans come up with better systems of teaching and better guidances to live by in the future? And so I think that's how we should judge it.
Yep, I agree with that. So we don't really have any of this. Like we don't have any evidence for the existence of Muhammad because we don't have any historic documents or something. All we have is like the Jacobi doctrine and some other things, but Muhammad isn't even mentioned there. Anyway, so what we have in the misogynistic camp is lots and lots of claims in the Quran. Like we don't see that there is any kind of reciprocation between men and women. Women are not allowed to have 4 husbands. And what happens? If you ask a Muslim about this, they will say, well, it's because you cannot determine the father of any children. And this is an automatic insertion. But hang on, why can't you have a woman who has 4 husbands if there are no children? And today, in the 21st century, on top of everything else, if it were important, which I don't think it is, who exactly the father is, then we have ways of determining this today. This is something that Muhammad didn't know, God didn't know, Quran didn't know, but we can determine these things today. So I think the apologetics here is extremely disingenuous and dishonest.
Can I just add on to that as well? When you're talking about that in heaven, a man will get 72 wives, and the question was asked, well, what does the wife get? Scholars for dollars are now saying, well, the Muslim wife that's on earth, when she goes to heaven, all of her selfishness will be removed from her, and she will not mind being one of the 72 wives. That is now the get out for what do women get in heaven if men get 72 wives? Well, she will still be the wife, but she won't mind being one of the 72.
But I mean, that's part of the narration, right?
And what
He's going to be pleased.
sorry, what Tony is saying in the chat, that counting pre-Islamic graffiti, that's bullshit. This has been debunked, I don't know how long ago. I don't know why people are bringing this up over and over and again and again. I don't know why. Sorry.
What were you about to say, Muhammad Qasim?
Yeah, I was basically saying that that's mentioned within the text. So that's the reason the scholars said that they're not making anything up. It's within the text. And also within the Quran, Allah says, He says, for the woman, men and women, He says He has prepared for them forgiveness and a great reward. So He's gonna make the both of them pleased, even though they might right now not feel that they want that particular reward. But once they get there, they'll be pleased.
Yeah, but what's the point in that? The point that I'm making is that a woman is not allowed to have 4 men. That's it. So a man is allowed to have 4 women, but not the other way around.
A man is allowed to have 4 women on earth, and a man's allowed to have 72 women in heaven.
or infinite
Yes,
women
well-
on Earth. He can have as many sex slaves as he wants.
Oh yeah, that what your right hand possesses, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so what you're doing is you're making an argument of ignorance because you don't know the wisdom behind a particular law. You're saying okay, because you got to understand we're coming from a premise that Islam is true, so Allah is true, and so His laws are the best laws, and there's wisdom behind every law, even though we might not be able to comprehend a particular law. So, for example, if you ask me what's the reasoning behind this particular law, I could say I don't know the ruling, the reasoning behind it. That still doesn't make it invalid in any way.
Yes, it does. Absolutely, it does.
How?
Because that is the argument from ignorance that you're talking about. Why would you accept something where you are totally ignorant? If you don't know something, why accept it?
Can I
Because
just
it's
add something?
believing in the unseen. Because you establish that the religion is true, you establish God is true, and after that, you accept His law. He tells you to jump, you jump. It's kind of
Muhammad
simple as that.
Exactly. This is the point. But you're accusing us of being ignorant, but you're the one who is ignorant and acting on ignorance.
No, you're making an argument of ignorance. You don't know the reasoning, and then you're concluding on that.
Can I ask a question about that, Muhammad Qasim? Are you saying that
Yeah.
you've gathered some evidence that you believe kind of makes you think that Islam is true, and once you've gathered that evidence, then anything else that Islam says, even if your human brain finds it completely illogical, you'd still believe that Islam is true? Is that am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, let me just clarify. So, you say human brain. So, our opinions and our beliefs, they're changing. So, our moral judgment will be changing. So what we might think is wrong, in 100 years, we might change that opinion if you were alive. So, that's the thing with God. He's got the objective. He's objectively good whatever He commands.
Okay, so let me. So, would you consider, for example, do you believe that do you think that you're able to tell what's right and wrong yourself, or do you need a religion to tell you what's right and wrong?
So I can tell you right and wrong, but it's going to differ from each individual. So I might feel killing someone is right, because I'm a greedy guy. So I might say, okay, yeah, that's fine. You can just rob a person, you can rob a person, and stuff like this. Another person might say, no, that's wrong. So
Okay,
you need
I get that, but I mean,
you need
you personally though, kind of, I'm wondering. Let's say it's before you've found out about Islam. Are you able to tell what's right and wrong then yourself, do you think? Or do you have no confidence in your personal ability to tell the difference between right and wrong?
yeah, I can make a claim. Yeah, I can say this is right, this is wrong. But it's not
Okay.
going to be objective. It's going to be flawed in every aspect.
But I mean, like, wouldn't you consider, like, for example, if before you found out about Islam, you're trying to find out why you're here, and you're being presented with several different explanations for why you're here, and one of them kind of says that one of them is a religion that says, for example, kill the Amalekites and smash their heads against rocks, or that sort of thing. And another religion says, treat others the way that you would like to be treated, and it doesn't mention anything about sanctioning killing babies. Don't you think that your personal sense of right and wrong can be used to kind of decide between those two religions to some extent?
It could, but I don't think that's the best way of looking at it. It's the main way I would say looking at it is establish the evidence for why a religion is true. Once you've done that, then you're gonna obviously accept it. For example, killing of adulterer in Islamic law, we have this punishment where if someone does adultery, you kill them. So prior to Islam, for example, if I wasn't a Muslim or if I wasn't a person who's practicing or anything like this, I would think this is not a good law or something. I would say maybe give them a prison sentence or whatever I feel best. But once you establish that the religion is true and God is true, then your opinion doesn't matter in that regard.
Okay.
In what's the best way, because God he has all knowledge, so he knows what's best.
All right then. So, like, I might understand that kind of moral reasoning, in your opinion, is or rather personal moral reasoning, in your opinion, is less reliable for finding out whether a religion is true or not, because I know from your perspective you might be influenced by society or that sort of thing, whereas so that's why you don't think it's the best way compared to other evidences.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
right.
right?
But there's a way, like, yeah, that's right. But there's a way, for example, with Christianity, smashing babies and killing the babies, you can make a claim that, okay, your God claims to be a just God, if that's what he's claiming. Then if he's going against something that he's claiming, then you can say it's a contradiction. You can disprove the God in that manner, in that way.
Okay. So another example of that might be if hypothetically, I realize that this is a hypothetical argument, but if hypothetically Islam said that in the case of rape, that kind of the man should be punished, and also the woman who was forced to commit zina by the rapist, she should also be punished. Like that would be a clear injustice, and so that would be a contradiction between, you know, Allah being just, and then you'd use that reasoning to discount Islam in the same way you use the reasoning about smashing the baby in the Bible to discount the Old Testament. Would that be fair? I realize this is hypothetical, but like, would that be fair hypothetically?
So the woman gets punished as well.
Yeah, for something that she was forced to do.
I would guess that you can make a claim that, okay, this is not fair, this is not just.
Okay, so
Yes,
how do you decide whether a moral example, like we've just discussed, like smashing a baby or raping or punishing a woman who was raped, how do you decide whether, you know, oh, that's an obvious injustice? We can use our logic to say, you know, this is an obvious injustice. But how do you decide whether it's not like those other situations you gave, like punishing the adulterer? Like, at what point are you confident enough in your ability to reason about morality?
So I would reckon that this is still not the best method of determining whether religion is true or not, because of the mere fact that this God is all knowledgeable, and this, you know, we're only seeing a piece of a puzzle. We're not seeing exactly why did he do it. We're not understanding where, you know, this particular action, where will it lead to, and we don't understand the whole picture. So that's the reason I would say that it's not the best method to employ.
Okay, but you did acknowledge that you can use that method reliably in some cases, like discounting the Old Testament.
Somewhat, yeah.
Okay, so
But
I know,
I
like,
still, yeah, I don't, I still, I can see flaws within it. So.
Okay, like, but yeah, I might have a little think about that, because it's an interesting thing. Like, if you say that kind of, you know, because it sounds to me like you're saying sometimes you can determine clear injustice, but other times kind of the injustice you know, it might not be clear enough, and it might just be all in your head, or it might just be you're you know, culturally biased or something. I know my personal take on the matter is that the way I personally think about it is that you know, if I'm expected to try and find out why I'm here and what religion is true, the only way I'm gonna ever be able to do that is to use my brain and use my reasoning. And so kind of my reasoning would apply to both kind of factual claims and like logical claims. Like, I know I can you know, try and reason about whether, you know, some scientific claim is right or wrong, is correct or incorrect. But I think my reasoning must also apply to moral claims. So if I know, observe a moral claim, like, for example, if I see something that's meant to be good guidance for mankind, like, and that alleged good guidance recommends kind of you know, if I fear rebelliousness from one of my wives, then I should follow this process where, the third step is to hit her. Kind of, I think I have confidence, or rather, I'm surely I must use my brain to kind of say to myself, this teaching from this book that's meant to be kind of the ideal book with the ideal guidance for all time. Surely, kind of this guidance is having bad effects in the world today, and this guidance could be made better. It could be less easily misinterpreted. Like we could make it so that kind of Muslims don't misunderstand it and start hitting their wives, like in the Taliban or something. Like, I know that seems to me like kind of quite an obvious flaw, where this book that's meant to be the best for all times and all places and mankind kind of is leading to some problems in the world today, where those are avoidable problems.
I've already explained. This book is very clear in this regard, in the hitting regard. I've quoted about 3 hadith where it's clear that it's not supposed to be with the harm. So I remember I told you that we have 2 sources. So a person who's reading the Islamic sources, he would know that you shouldn't do this with harm, and it's symbolic.
So these hadith sources, they, for one thing, they get compiled formally around 200 years after Muhammad died, and so that's quite a bit of time before then where this guidance might be lost, or it might be kind of not well spread out. Like the thing that kind of is spread to all Muslims is the Quran, and yet kind of if you don't have the hadith, then you're saying that this Quran is kind of currently in quite a sort of dangerous state. I'd say it can provide dangerously misleading advice, where without the hadith, kind of Muslims end up kind of being given advice that they could easily misinterpret and think that, oh, it's okay for us to hit our wives if they're being rebellious. So I know doesn't that seem kind of inadequate? Like surely it would be a better state of affairs. Wouldn't it be a better state of affairs if the verse kind of didn't simply say hit in a kind of ambiguous way? If it specifically said hit with a mishwak, then it would be like every Muslim who has a Quran, they'd know exactly what was meant. Whereas what it is right now is that kind of Muslims can only be certain that it means like tap with a mishwak if they also have the hadith, which kind of obviously Muslims don't all have. And a lot of Muslims, for example, like Shia Muslims, wouldn't have access to the same hadith books. It's isn't it couldn't it be improved, is what I'm saying? Couldn't the situation be improved if this was in the Quran?
That's the point.
So
exactly. Because what you can do is you can take any book. You can take Moby Dick, and in Moby Dick you can write, well, don't follow what I say in Moby Dick, but go and follow what somebody else does. So what is the point of the Quran if the Quran is totally useless and you only go according to what Muhammad said? That's it doesn't work.
And not only that, you're condemning Allah, because Allah says that his book is clear and easy to understand, and it's been sitting in heaven since before creation of the universe. So what does that say about words that have been in existence for millennium? Let's just have a guess and say we'll say 20,000 years then that these words were in heaven, only that they can't last 1,000 years on earth. What does that say about this clear message, easy to understand, and that it's supposed to be eternal?
Can I comment on that? So in regards to the following the Quran or not the Hadith and stuff, with the Sunni Islam, we have to follow the Hadith. If we don't follow the Hadith, then that person will be excommunicated. So that person will not be a Muslim no more if he rejects all of the Hadith. That's because let me just finish. That's because that's because he's rejecting revelation. Hadith is also revelation, but it's a different type. It's the word of the Prophet, and it's the knowledge that's being given to the Prophet. Whereas the Quran is a literal word of God. That's the difference between them two, and that's why a person cannot just take the Quran alone. Otherwise, you can come up with anything. You can. That's how ISIS exists, because they have twisted the verses for their own agenda. So I mean, a person can do that with any book. So it doesn't matter how clear it is. People are still gonna do that with the scripture.
I think it really
It's
matters.
done with the Bible.
Let's welcome Takiyat on the panel. Welcome. What is your take on this?
Allah Akbar.
Oh,
Well, I do have a question for Qasim, but I'm looking for a reference. So give me a minute and I'll be back.
Okay. All right. Now, the point that I want to make, come on, if you have a book which is supposed to have been written by a god, I expect bloody perfection, because it cannot be an imperfect God. After all, it is a bloody God. And if it's a God,
Yeah,
it
it's
bloody
perfect.
well must be patient and must be perfect. And there is no way that I would accept that a sentence like this, like a really terrible sentence like this, was written by a God if it doesn't make any kind of sense. And you need to, like, I don't know, thousands of years later, still go and you need to justify what it says in that book if a God is not capable of writing something that is clear and understood and explained, and then says in the book it is clear and explained and understood and everything, and it's not. That, come on, it doesn't work.
We're talking about
It's-
how to treat your wife here as well. I notice when we're talking about Quranic science, we use science to condemn Quranic science. Abdul Samir, as well as the apostate prophet, even though they are atheists, are quite open about using other scripture when those other scriptures are contradicted by the Quran, or when the Quran contradicts those other scriptures. So using that principle, the Bible is quite clear on how to treat your wife. First Corinthians chapter 11 is one example. Second Peter is another example about how to treat your wife. It's quite clear and distinct. There's no ambiguity there. So now I know what you're going to say. The Bible's being corrupted. The Bible's a load of rubbish. You're a Paulian, or I've heard of all of verbatim. Please don't insult my intelligence by giving me your normal default insults. But the point I want to make, whether you accept it or not, it is still scripture that's older than the Quran and clearer than the Quran. Even if it's written by, in your ascension, demons or men, it is still clear. So why can Allah write a clearer book than men, or a clearer book than demons?
You're saying Bible is clear?
Huh?
Are you saying Bible is clear?
We're talking about wives, how to treat your wife. Yes, but that's the subject.
I mean, it clearly says, like, it talks about women. It talks about women. It says that those who not cover their hair, shave their hair.
Okay, we're talking about how to treat your wife. Did you not understand the subject? How to treat your wife. On the subject
Wasn't
of
it misogyny of women, wasn't it?
No. So yet again, stop using your scholars for dollars and your defaults. It's a simple question. Why is it then that the men or demons, because in your ascension, the Bible is a book of men, corrupted by men or corrupted by demons? That's what your default is. It has to be. Why is it that Allah cannot write a book or write verses in his Quran that are clearer than what forgeries by men are concerned, or forgeries by demons are concerned? Because it's quite clear when we go through the Quran, we read it and we see what it says: beat your wife after you're verbally abused her, after you've psychologically abused her. And you're coming along saying it doesn't mean this, it doesn't mean that, you need the hadith. Well, it just proves yet again that Allah is the worst communicator in the history of religion. Surely.
If you can't understand it, that's your fault. It's not.
No, I can
it's not
understand it when it says verbally
if you have
admonish.
some sort of a problem, that's your problem. It's not.
But when it
God's
says a
fault.
woman, when she walks in front of a man, and the prayer has to start all over again, because there are three things that annul a man's prayer: a dog, a donkey, and a woman. When it says that, when Islam teaches like a woman has deficiency in religion, when it says that a woman, can be married, be one of 4 wives and one of 72, do you not see a pattern developing there about the attitude of Islam and women? It's not just one
Nope.
thing; it's a repeated pattern of other things.
Nope. We can go through one by one.
You're a
Unless
Muslim,
you just wanna mention multiple points.
Yeah.
Can I ask a quick question, Mohammed Qasim, about would you say that if without kind of the hadith about the mishwak or that sort of thing, would you say that this verse was problematic or flawed because it would be unclear kind of what kind of beating what God wanted or had in mind, and so this could cause and probably would cause Muslims to kind of hit their wives in sort of unjustified ways. So would you say that the hadith, because of this verse, the hadith are kind of necessary, or else this verse would be kind of flawed or misleading by itself?
No, it wouldn't actually, because there's other verses of the Quran where it says in Surah Talaq, it says, "Do not harm them in order to make it difficult for them." So it's saying that do not harm them. So you can deduce from that you cannot harm them, and then apply that to even the verse about hitting.
What if what if it? So yeah, what if it kind of its idea of harm kind of doesn't match your own idea of harm? Kind of, I know, isn't it kind of confusing to say on the one hand, hit your wife, and then on the other hand, don't harm them? Like that could mean, for example, if I punch my wife in the stomach, that's not going to leave any permanent harm. It's just a bit of pain, you could say. So it's not really like, you aren't necessarily harming her, you're just hurting her a bit.
Yeah.
So maybe
yeah,
I
agree.
Confusion.
Yeah, I agree. Without the Sunnah, you could get misled in many aspects. So even in this, without the Sunnah, you could say this hitting could be severe, or it could be anything. It's possible for someone to even reach that conclusion. But Sunnah makes it very clear, because Allah says in the Quran to follow the Sunnah, to follow the Prophet. That and then when you go to the Prophet, and the Prophet is very clear in these regards, he said, "Do not harm them," and he even told people to. He said that they are not the best among you, those who beat their wives.
Can I challenge that? I mean, there were one lady that came to Aisha, right, and her skin was greener than her clothes, and the Prophet was informed about this, and his response was basically that the reason you were beaten was because you don't want to have sex with this man, which you actually married newly married, basically. And the reason why she married this new husband is because, are you aware of this?
Yeah, I'm aware of that incident, but he doesn't. He didn't condone that. He didn't condone what the men were doing.
But do you know the reason why she married this man? She didn't like him. She didn't love him. Are you aware of the reason why?
No, I'm not aware of the actual incident. Exactly what happened. But I just remember that there was some beating that happened.
Yeah, her previous husband made a talaq 3 times. And she wanted to go back to her husband. And the way that she can make a reconciliation with her previous husband, she probably had a kid with him, I'm not sure about that, is that she has to marry a new husband, have sex with him, divorce him, and then go back to her ex-husband.
Could you read it word for word, because it seems like you're kind of paraphrasing it?
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing, of course. Do you want the exact reference?
Yeah, but if you could read it word for word, because from what I've read, it was basically there's people that were hitting their wives, and then she had like a green spot or something, and then they came to Aisha and they told her, and it was the end of that. That's it. Really.
So you just go to sunnah.com, write green clothed greener, and you find it. And she's being told, or Muhammad is being told, that she wants to go back to her ex-husband. And you'll find hadith as well that now you're divorced her 3 times. She has to find a new husband, have sex with him, and go back. Do you want to read it? Should I post the link maybe?
I found it here. It says,
just go back, go to sunnah.com and write.
Why are you always asking for the exact reference, and then when you get it, you reject it? So what is the point of doing that?
Because he's paraphrasing, because I want to identify exactly what happened in the incident, because mostly there's a lot of twisting that happens. So I've got the narration.
Yeah, but you're always asking for the exact reference, and then when the reference turns out to be what we said, just a little different word, then you immediately reject the whole thing, because the word that you expect there is not there. The point is that we are paraphrasing, yes, because there is no precise source for any of this. So I don't quite understand why you always ask for the reference and then you reject it anyway. So what's the point? If you don't like the content, then why don't you say, look, I'm going to reject it no matter what?
Where have I rejected a reference? Where have I so far rejected any reference that was presented?
You are taking the words from the Quran and saying they are wrong.
I never said they were wrong. When did I did this? You're making stuff up right now.
Do you admit that the Quran says that you should beat your women?
It doesn't say beat. I already said that to you. I said it says hit. And then I said this was symbolic
it's
hit,
the
and then
same
I
thing.
explained already, and
No.
we're just going in
It's
circles.
same thing.
But if
This
I
is
can,
exactly my
just go to
point.
the hadith, yeah.
This is
Qasim,
my
it's-
point,
so
that
it's-
you are rejecting it. Even if I give you the word for word, whatever, you are rejecting it because you want to argue about individual words. It's stupid. Because
What
you're not making a point. You're not helping Islam. You're not helping Muslims. You're not helping yourself by going and then insisting on a specific word being there. You said you want the word rape. You want the word beat. You want the word this. It's irrelevant. It's the message that is contained therein. And this is what Simon is doing at the
The
moment.
message
He's
is
giving
perfect.
you a message.
The
It
message
doesn't
is
really
perfect.
matter.
Yeah, the message is perfect.
What about the message? So the message is right when it says, this is in the Quran, your wife is like a field to you. Approach your field how you want to.
Yeah, I'm
That-
sure we spoke about this last time. Taqiyya Watcher knows this, and he also he explained what this was meant. Taqiyya, you there? Is he here? Is he gone?
He's gone. Might hop back in later.
Yeah,
Because the
that
thing is,
basically
Mohammed,
said that,
and I think you
you
are the
can
person,
approach
because
it
this
how you
is
want.
exactly
About
what
sexual
you
intercourse.
said. What you said about the women who are being raped, even though they are married. You said the message is perfect. These are exactly the words that I remember. So I think you were the one who said that it's perfectly okay to rape female captives even if they're married, because you said the
I never
message
said
is
rape. You can
perfect.
watch the whole video again. I never said the rape. But we did speak about slaves and stuff. We did speak about that. But I never said the rape is fine.
So
You can watch the whole video.
do you
You just assume that I said that.
do you totally reject slavery in any kind of form?
Of course not.
No, but at least I commend you. You're actually being honest, and you're saying no, I don't condemn it, because you know by condemning it, you're condemning Islam. So
But he's a moral monster.
Yeah, no, but the thing is, he's being a Muslim. He's doing exactly what it says on the tin. So that has to be commended, that he's being honest to his religion. I applaud you and your honesty. So I hate it, but I applaud it. Thank you for your honesty. You're probably one of the first true Muslims we've had on here, in that sense. We don't agree with it, but you're actually agreeing with what your text says. So fair play to you.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah.
Yes, Simon, you're back.
You go first, Qasim.
No, you can go ahead. It's fine.
Okay. I guess I came here for just one references, and the view that Allah is presented according to Muhammad. Can you see my references? Can you see my resource?
The Bukhari 742.
15777. Can you see my reference?
Yep, we can see it on screen.
Yeah. So my question for you, Qasim, is a friendly challenge. It's about back in the days about Moses taking a bath. Have you heard about this reference, Qasim? Qasim, have you heard about this reference?
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, he's taking a bath, and basically his.
Can you hear me? Or?
Yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah. He's taking a bath, and basically his testicles are being swollen, if I'm not mistaken here. There's a different hadith here. And what we are seeing here is a stone is taking his clothes. Do you see this here? The stone is running away with the clothes of Moses.
Dropped out. I need to put him back in.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is the story of the runaway stone.
Right.
Somebody is creating an echo.
Oh, it's me. It's me.
Can you hear me? Or?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right. Yeah, I've seen this narration before.
What's the point of the what's the challenge, Simon? You're still muted, Simon.
Oh, sorry, I was speaking muted. Yeah. So the question here would be like, you have a stone that is running away with the clothes here, and Moses is running after the clothes and say, "Here's my clothes. Oh, stone, give me back my clothes." So I guess my question for you, Kasim, my friendly challenge would be, do you think this matches the view of God that you have presented in the Quran and Hadith?
Yeah, we accept this narration.
Yeah. So as believers, there should always be like this internal doubt, which is a strength, that what you have in front of you is presented by God directly. There's no way you can verify it. And you should always doubt and say this could be man-made. As atheists, they should ask the same question.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Could you guys hear anything that I said?
Yeah, we were able to hear
to hear you.
Okay. So Kasim, can you hear what I'm saying? Kasim?
I think he's had to duck in and
done.
go duck back in and come back in a second.
Okay, I'll be back. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes we have problems with phones. If people are on phones, especially if they're iPhones, I don't know why. I need to ask Kasim if he has an iPhone, because this is the typical thing that we've seen happening. And it's not his fault. There's something with StreamYard which doesn't seem to gel with iOS. Anyway, the point that is being made here is actually quite primitive. It's just that the hadiths are unreliable, because you can take any hadith and you can find the opposite somewhere along the line, and you can find a narration which is going to contradict the narration that you're just getting from the hadith. And this is why I don't really like using hadith, because there's so many, you can get anything that you want out of them. This is why I like staying with the Quran, and then saying, well, if the Quran doesn't do it for you, then you've got a problem, because you are the one who believes that this is, is of divine origin, and therefore you need to be the one to actually adhere to what it says if you believe this is really written by a God. If it's not written by a God, well then what's the point? Why believe it in any case? And this is why I'm saying there's a huge problem here for a Muslim to justify anything that is in the Quran and anything that they are believing. Because a lot of times it's not what it says in the Quran, and what they are doing is they're picking and choosing individual words from the Quran and then looking for anything that substantiates it in the Hadith, and then they go and they say, you see, I was right all along. But they don't realize that anything that you do like that can be easily contradicted. And this is the problem. Okay, what were you doing, Simon Takia? What were you trying to show now with this?
I came to actually just show one thing. Can you show my screen? Yeah. So I was showing basically as a description of when Moses was taking a bath, and basically was resulting that his clothes was taken away by thieves, which was the stones that was running away with his clothes, and he was running after the clothes, and he was saying, "Give me my clothes back." So I think as a believer, I'm not really attacking Islam right now. As a believer, you should always have this doubt within you, saying that, is this man-made or is this God-given? And I believe that each atheist should believe the same thing, or agnostics, that, hey, what we're presenting right now, is there potential for a God belief, or is there actually information that we haven't discovered yet? So my question for you, Hassan, would be, do you think this reflects, does this match the view that you have about God? Do you think the stones actually took the clothes of Moses and ran away? That's my question.
Yeah, so I think there's echo. But yeah, we would accept this, and then we would say that this was a miracle that God did. And then we would say that it's to show him like his innocence towards what they were accusing him of, and it doesn't decrease of the honor of Prophet Moses. So I mean, that's exactly what happened in the narration, what he says.
Can you tell me what, Sorry, so I'm interfering. Sorry.
No, go loose. I guess that was my question.
I'm trying to understand from an Islamic recension, and considering that Moses was 2,000 years before Muhammad, what is the point of the story? The Jews don't have the story. They don't have it in the Torah, and they don't have it, to my knowledge, they don't have it in the Talmud. So what's the point of the story?
So there's a many lessons you can probably draw from it. So one of them, like just looking at me looking at it, I can see that Allah, He protects His prophets, and He shows their innocence in certain regards when they're getting accused of stuff, and it also shows that the attitude that His followers had in regards to Him and the people, and it shows the challenges that they went through, and so it gives the follower of Prophet Muhammad strength by looking at the stories of the past and learning lessons from them.
Did you just make that up?
Yeah, just by looking at the narration itself.
So you just made that up then, yeah?
I'm saying this is the benefits I can draw from it.
Okay,
that's cool.
Do you understand how a person can do that? Or
no, that's okay. But if we look at the claims in the Quran, because one of the top 10 would be, yes, it's Quran allows beating of wives. Quran allows men the luxury of having 4 wives, and women are given the raw end of the deal. Even when it comes to inheritance, they only inherit half. Now, this is something that you cannot deny, because that's what it says twice in the Quran, and this is the way that all the Sharia calculators work. That the woman gets half in the case of inheritance. So I don't quite understand how anybody can say that there is anything like equality in Islam. And then Muhammad, of course, changes it. And now what you are saying, well, we need to follow Muhammad. Well, so is this just a la-di-da God? If he says, look, the daughters get 2/3 of what the man leaves, does that mean, well, it says 2/3, but I don't really need to follow this? No, it doesn't matter. If Muhammad says they get 1/4, that's good enough. How do you do that?
So you mentioned so many stuff there. I was responding. I would say that the mother and the daughters in Islam, they have a massive, like in some cases they're even more than men. You can probably see that even the men are treated low. If you were going to look at it that way.
That is not correct.
I'll give you an example. The mother, for example, our son has to obey the mother, and it's actually
No.
Let me finish.
Because what you're doing is you're going off track. What I'm saying in general, you can go and construct an example where this is the case. Yes, but that is not the point. What you are doing is exactly making my point, where you are saying, well, yes, then the mother gets more, the daughter gets more, but it says in the Quran they get half.
Yeah, I'm saying we have to look at it holistically. A man is supposed to be the one who takes care of the woman. So
exactly, that is misogyny in Islam.
When the woman gets less, the man is the one who's going to provide for her. That's the reason he gets more.
That is the misogyny in Islam.
The misogyny is dislike or hate. So there's no misogyny. There's no dislike for them. You can't prove there's any dislike for them.
It's not only dislike, it is also prejudice, it is also hatred. What do you call this?
There's no hatred.
What do you call this if a man dies and he leaves, I don't know, $100 or something, excuse me, and he has one daughter and one son? Shouldn't they get 50-50?
So God decides what they're going to get?
Yes. Is that misogynistic or not?
No, it's not. It's not hatred. It's not because of hatred or dislike for them. This law is the best.
What do you want to call it?
It's called perfect law, the best law for them.
So it's the best law if
they receive less. Yeah.
I mean, you are a monster. You are a human monster. How can you say that a man and a woman are equal? They have the same job. They have the same everything. And the woman gets half, and then you say, "No, this is perfectly just."
You got some funny words, monster.
You are. You think rape is fine. You think beating is fine. You think all this is fine, and now you're saying, "Well, it's perfectly okay if the woman gets half of what the man inherits." That's
Yeah, because the man will be taking care of the woman. He's the one who's going to be
No,
spending
they
on the
both
woman.
have a job. They have the same identical job.
No, they don't. The man has to be the caretaker, and that's
Why?
clearly
What are
proven
you
from the Quran.
talking about?
It's
I'm
from the
not the
Quran.
caretaker
The
of my
inherit-
wife. My wife can earn more than me. She can be
You're a
the captain
non-Muslim.
in the jet, and
Law
I
doesn't
can be
apply to you.
the cabin
Law does
crew.
not apply to you. You're a non-Muslim, so this law doesn't apply to you. It applies to believers who actually accept this law, and they would be happy with this law. So I don't know why you got a problem with it.
I have a problem with it because there are a lot of women that I know who have a problem with it.
Then they should get a divorce and move on.
No, they are leaving Islam. That's what they're doing.
They can't just get a divorce and move on. You make it sound like they're in the Western world. Maybe in the Western world they could go get a divorce and move on. That's not happening in Muslim countries, though, is it? I mean, it's okay.
Yeah, it can happen there, though.
No,
They can
it
get
doesn't
divorced.
happen that way, sir. I am an ex-Muslim. I've been to Muslim countries, so you're not talking to another Caucasian on the show that has no Islamic understanding.
I can give you 12 reasons if I can pull it up, and they can get divorced from the court for these 12
See,
reasons.
this is again.
No, the
it
divorce
doesn't
is
matter.
decided by the divorce is decided by the Sharia judge.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So she can't go get a divorce if the divorce is decided by the Sharia judge. The Sharia judge decides the divorce.
Firstly, she should have thought of it prior to getting married to someone. Secondly, if she's now in a contract, she has already married, she can get a divorce on valid basis. She can get a divorce. Of course, she can.
Thunder,
If she doesn't want to be with him,
Thunder,
and she says, "I don't like it with him," and she explains the situation, then yeah,
Thunder,
she
you
can get
need to
divorced.
accept it. You need to accept it. Muhammad Qasim is a monster. He cannot think like a normal
No, he's
human
not a
being.
monster. He's a Muslim. He's not a monster. He's a Muslim.
Yeah, but not all Muslims are like that. Come on.
No, that's
I know
because
very
all
normal Muslims who don't react like this. I
No.
know a lot of female Muslims who don't react like this,
That's
who
because
will
they're
not
not knowledge.
accept it.
That's
Yeah,
because
no,
On the subject of divorce, so
Yeah,
I
see,
mean,
now
if we're
we're
talking about mainstream Islamic law, the Sharia, then it's kind of well agreed that a man can decide by himself, I want a divorce, and to do that, he just says, I divorce you, and he can do that 3 times, or he can kind of do it once after she's finished menstruating, and that would be like a sunnah divorce. Whereas a woman, her divorce procedure is, I think, called kula or kul, and in order to do that, she has to either ask the husband's permission to get a divorce and pay back her dowry, or she needs to go to the Sharia court or the judge and seek permission from them and like make a complaint against the husband for some sort of reason. So we can admit, I hope, that there is definitely women have a less right or less ability to get divorced. Like they can't just do it by themselves unilaterally on their own decision. Like they have to either get their husband's permission or a judge's permission. Isn't that right?
Yeah, there's so much wisdom behind this particular law where the man has been, for example, the man has, he gets the right to give the divorce. The reason is because the man is giving the dowry, right? And the dowry sometimes extends to like, thousands or £10,000. So if a woman it was just to get, if she just got married and then just for that, for the dowry and then she went away, then what will happen is a person could make a business out of this, getting married and then stealing and running away and divorcing the husband and going away. So Islam says that, okay, the man can divorce. He gets the right of divorcing because he's paying for the dowry and he's paying, generally they be paying a high amount. So that's the reason he gets the right of doing that. And the woman also can get divorced for many reasons. I can list them if you like. If she's getting abused, she can get a divorce.
No, you don't need to list them.
This abuse includes beating, swearing, cursing, attempting.
No, you don't need to list them.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay.
But so like you did say a few moments ago, kind of well, she shouldn't have gotten married then. So I could kind of say the same thing about kind of like if a man kind of wants to get married to a woman and then he buys her a house and she turns out to be a con artist, like a mail order bride who just kind of wants his money or something, then it's kind of like let the buyer beware. Like that, people always have to take responsibility for who they decide to marry. But it's a bigger problem though, because it isn't always a woman's decision whether she gets married in Islamic law, because, for example, when you're talking about children below the age of I think they call it maturity, like baligh or something, BALIGH. Kind of her father or her guardian, male guardian, can marry her kind of without her consent, like just like she doesn't give consent at any point, but like he makes the decision for her. So even so, in that case, kind of, it's not like you're an adult and you've made your bed, now lie in it. It's like
Can I clarify that?
unequal kind of system.
Yeah, can I clarify that? So, in regards to the marriage, the woman, for example, the father can say, "Okay, I'm going to marry my daughter off to you," prior to her being, puberty or being mature, and then when she reaches the age of puberty and maturity, at that point, consent is needed, and you can find this within the hadith where a woman comes, she says, "My father has got me married off," and she comes to the Prophet, and then she says, forcefully I got married, and then the Prophet said, you can either divorce him or stay with him, and then the woman says, I rather stay with him, but I just wanted to get this ruling for other women. And so this is very clear from Islamic text that consent is needed. It's there's various hadiths on this where consent is needed.
Okay, the point is that, but let's not go into this marriage thing anymore. The point, Mohammed, you are the reason why people are leaving Islam, really, because you are incapable of living in the 21st century, a normal life according to what women want, according to men want. And this is the problem with Islam, that it gives people the ammunition and the ability to do exactly what you are doing. And this is the problem. And this is why people realize
people are leaving,
it doesn't
that's their
belong in the
choice.
21st
If they want to
century.
leave, they can leave. If they want to leave the truth, they can leave it. And I'm actually living in the West. I'm living in UK, so I don't see. I'm living day-to-day life. There's no problem.
There is a problem. There is a problem. People like you don't belong here.
Society doesn't feel it.
You don't belong here. You don't
it.
belong into this era. You belong into the 7th century in Arabia. You don't belong
Well,
here.
we're not going anywhere, so get used to it.
Islam did not belong in any era. So, I don't like it when people say, it belongs in the 7th century. Islam did not even deserve to belong in the 7th century, because Islam does not even deserve to belong. So, this, it doesn't deserve now. It's a bit like the comment that, last week about we're in the 20th century, women should be treated different. They shouldn't have been treated any different 1400 years ago. This should never have happened. That's the point I make from my perspective.
Christianity as well, right? You agree?
We're not talking about Christianity. This is a Muslim show, not a Christianity show. We don't.
So you're gonna be a hypocrite. You're gonna apply your hypocrisy to it.
How do you know if I'm a Christian or not?
I was told that you was a Christian.
Was you? Who by?
Just on the YouTube comment section.
Okay, gentlemen, it's time. We've been discussing this long, and I've actually wanted to get through to some other of the sentences. I thought we were going to cover the top 10. We'll have to do that next week. We've only covered 3 of them, so we'll have to go next week on this. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank James. I want to thank Takia for coming on for the plus side, and I want to thank also Deeds and Mohammed Kasim for the minus side. The minus side being trying to refute what it says in the Quran. Unfortunately,
I just want to thank Mohammed for coming on the show. I've enjoyed your company, and I enjoy your honesty. Actually, you've come on the show. You've done your best to represent what you believe, and you stood to be counted for what you believe. And in this day and age, there are too many cowards, and you've come up on the show and been upfront about it. So I hate what you say, but I respect your right to say it.
He's done most of the hard work.
And
guests on the show, I appreciate your input as well.
Yeah, and I think
I'm sure you do.
Well done everyone for a civilized discussion. Like this wouldn't be very possible, I don't think, on something like a Raspek show or the like. So yeah, good job, everyone.
But okay, yeah.
And I look forward to talking to everyone again in the future. Like I feel like there's definitely been some good sort of lines of inquiry. Like I know things to think about for next time, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is the point, and this is what I'm hoping, that people will actually listen to this and start thinking, especially Muslims, if they think, my goodness, is this really what I believe? Is this really true? And okay, some people have made up their minds, and they say, yeah, it's the perfect message, and that's it. I'm not going to waver. I'm not going to do anything. I don't care what it says. I'm going to follow it. Boof, that's it. But then other people are there who are going to say, well, hang on, is this really true? Is this what I stand for? Can I support this? And this is where it gets tough, I think, for a lot of people. And that is why Islam
That's the
is
approach I
shrinking so
take.
fast. Anyway. Yeah, I think, and I think this is the most realistic one. If you go and question these things, that's cool. It's just a pity that we need to first go to these things to even pull up something like this, an old ancient book, which says that you can beat women, and then we need to argue, discuss this, and backwards and forwards. And for me, I think, what are we really do we need this? So, all right, I'll leave you with the hadith of the week, which is from Bukhari, volume 1, book 4, number 238. And the Prophet said, a wound which a Muslim receives in Allah's cause will appear on the day of resurrection, as it was at the time of infliction. Blood will be flowing from the wound, and its color will be that of the blood, but it will smell like musk. This would be one of those things which are scientifically inaccurate and can therefore be discarded. All right. I'll leave you with that. Gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll see you next week on the Gin and Tonic Show, where we're going to continue our, quest or whatever into
How do you
misogyny.
say it will smell like musk? I think that's an anagram of scum.
Is it? I don't know what it is. No, it's K. Musk with K.
Yeah, well, it's spelled Arabically, so it's Arab.
Okay, I don't know. Okay, we're gonna continue with this. We're gonna go with the themes this month. It is misogyny. We're gonna go into slavery. We're gonna go into all sorts of topics, all the ideas on a monthly basis to go and look at this from different perspectives and at different levels of intensity and detail. So hope to see you next week on the Gin and Tonic Show. Thank you, ladies, gents, and others. Thank you for the chat. Oh, I forgot to ask. I need to remember to stop a little bit earlier and then ask in the chat, are there any questions from the chat? Because I want to be more interactive with the people who are coming here to listen to this on the live show, to give them, some sort of benefit for being here for the live show. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
No.